It's a lot. All right.
Looks like 50 or 60.
Okay, we're going to ask everybody to be quiet while we play the intro. When I put my finger down or when I talk, we're done. Hit that button! Recording live from the Haley Sisters Memorial Studios, straight out of lovely Almont, Ontario, it's time for This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes, your unofficial Warmahordes news broadcast. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday night, the beers are cold, the news is fresh, and the death clock starts now. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 100th episode. 100, Jason.
I can't believe we actually made it.
We made it to 100, and we're not going to do anything special for it.
I like the ones and zeros. That's awesome, guys.
I might leave early.
Or stay late, one or the other.
Stay late.
We have a lot of cool stuff happening tonight. We do have some news, but I think the most important thing that's happening tonight is we have Oz and Will Pagani on, which is pretty friggin' cool. The Wills. So there's going to be 3 Wills, so I'm going to refer to them as Oz and Pagani for the rest of the night.
That's good. That's why.
Just to fix confusion. Before we get started, I got to introduce my co-hosts. On my left, your right, the Ringo to my George, the one and only Jason Maelstrom. How's it going, Jason?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. We had
Awesome.
We got a game in this week.
That was last week.
You're really no, that was Saturday. It's kind of this week.
That's Saturday.
You really love Grimkin.
Playing
into Grimkin.
No.
You don't love playing into Grimkin?
No.
I'm officially on game 9 of a winning streak with Dreamer that has been.
Yeah,
I'm living the dream. Somebody's going to crush my dream.
I hope so. Jesus.
On my right, your left, the one and only George Semi-Automagic. Jorge, say hello.
Hello.
You and I got a game in last week.
Yes.
But did you get another game in?
I had the butcher go in and kill your everything except for one last skin and bones.
Except for one last skin and bones.
That's all it
who
takes.
Crushed your dream.
That's all it takes.
I love Dreamer. All right, I'm going to go over to the Wills, starting with Oz. How was your week in War Machine, sir? Did you get any games in?
Generally, I get games in of War Machine and playtest, but not yet this week.
Gotcha. Mr. Pagani, any games in this week?
Oh yes. Mini games.
Many things you cannot talk about.
Correct. Yes.
All right,
I did wrestle with a large bird this morning.
I watched that. That was awesome.
That kind of counts.
That was a lot of fun.
Totally
Thanks, Oz.
counts.
You played with War Machine models. I think that counts.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I did get eaten. It was a conspiracy.
You were kind of teamed up on there. It was unfortunate.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a couple of news items, and we've got people that actually helped to release that news to actually help us along in talking about it.
Yeah, we do.
So one of the cool things is the second round of the Man of War CID. That
Hashtag fake news.
Hashtag fake news kicked out today.
Fake rules.
Sorry, fake rules. Fake rules. You screwed me up on that one.
I know.
So
Rules on purpose.
You guys are off the rails. Come on.
totally off the rails. So I mean, we may as well go to Pagani on this. Tell me a bit about the second round and where we are with that Kador CID.
Well, whereas we started pretty aggressive with a lot of things, we toned some stuff down. We'll probably spring back on a couple things, and we tried out some pretty aggressive stuff, like dual attack on the Spriggan, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It seems really good right now. We'll see how that works out in actual gameplay. Suppression tanker lost auto fire, not auto fire.
So
Volley fire.
Volley fire.
We had to change it from auto fire because everyone calls continuous effect fire auto fire, not auto fire like a machine gun. So yeah, but I think that rule got removed. It might still be there somewhere. I don't know. Yeah, so I think we've got some good changes going in there. I think we're making some headway on a lot of stuff. Keep it up, guys. We're getting a lot of really great feedback. So.
Cool things this week, of course, is we got a really great preview of a bunch of the new Crix models coming out, and of course the big thing is Scar, the Admiral of the Dragon Fleet, dropped. Like you can order it online, you can pre-order it online now, and the painter in me is like, I really.
She's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
The only problem is having to buy a Sea King to mount that other half of the ship
It's not
on.
the same scale. It's not the same scale.
It's much smaller on the Sea King.
No, just take the boat off of the Sea King and put Scar up there, and then blight up
sure.
that troll.
Sure.
For the world's largest caster. I just love that she has Cutlass drive the boat closer. I wish to hit it with my sword.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Anything you guys want to say about that now that the rules are out and people have had a chance to look at it?
It's very impressive in person. That family shot of the Wraith engine.
Oh, man.
And Scar 2 and something else maybe, that doesn't do it justice.
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, the thing, I'm actually worried that it's not going to fit in a tournament bag for Battle Foam because it's so much bigger than its base.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can't see how it does.
I don't know if it fits. Like, it might be too wide.
I'm probably going to have to buy another Battle Foam bag just for Scar 3.
Just for Scar 3.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
It be a Battle Foam bag.
well, you'll have the same problem I did when I was playing Convergence. When you routinely have 2 battle engines and 2 colossals in your between your 2 lists, you end up having 2 battle foam bags, one just for huge bases, and then one for the rest of your army.
And as far as rules-wise goes, I'm really happy with how she turned out. She is very diverse in what lists she can play in.
Yeah.
I know later this week I'm going to be sharing some of the Black Industries tech that we came up with at ATC. I really like her in Slaughterfleet. I really like her with the Satixis. I think she's got a really cool Infernal Machines build. Like, I think she's got a bunch of different stuff that she can do. And hopefully the Grix players are excited to explore all those different options with her.
I'm excited.
We also got a preview of a bunch of the Black Fleet models that dropped today too. Were those models that came out today?
No, we just found out when they were being released.
Oh, okay, we've seen them before.
They included
Okay,
the model
I got
shots with that
confused. There
release.
was another thing on the internet that I saw. Somebody sent me things and was like, "Hey, check this out."
We did.
I
See,
think a couple of the Blighted Ogren models got previewed today, though.
Yeah.
That was probably what it was. So, yeah.
and we saw GoLab and Amok.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Amok and
Those
the giant bird.
Yeah.
Man, GoLab looks really, really nice.
Yeah.
The detail on its wings are super crisp, and
That's
I'm really happy
it's
with that.
crazy. I can't wait to try and paint that thing.
What were the trolls that you were showing me last night, Jason?
The trolls?
The ones that you just gotten.
The Raiders.
The Raiders. I was really impressed with the sculpt on the Raiders.
Oh yeah, they're gorgeous.
Just on the plastic sculpt.
The resin is amazing.
I guess it was really highlighted by the fact that you also had old champs.
Yeah,
I
I
had
had
same list that are like tiny little models
Yeah.
with hardly any detail, and then the next model you handed me was those Raiders. I was like, oh, that's a nice model.
So I sold my metal champs today and immediately bought another set of the
Plastic
new
champs.
champs. They're so good.
All right, guys, we're gonna go into this roundtable because this is what people really want to hear about.
Oh, I thought we were just going to tease it forever.
We were just gonna tease it forever.
Like in the last 5 minutes, we'll go. Oh yeah, this is the model. Bye.
Here's what I'm doing. I'm going on to our Facebook page right now, and I am going to drop this little spoiler. Here we go. Publish. So anybody that has not seen them yet, because you're now listening to the show after the fact, if you go onto our Facebook page, publish. Publish. This is where it freezes.
Yeah,
and nothing
that's gonna
happens.
be hilarious.
Okay, well, we'll make sure it gets up there. But George, you're going to throw them up on the screen for everybody
Absolutely.
to see for a second.
What do you want to start with?
Well, first I want
Or
my.
are we going to go into the other stuff here first?
Well, let's take. What do the show notes say?
Show notes says we're
So
talking about the factory
first
parts.
thing, while we let everybody catch up and we let my Facebook catch up, the first thing we're going to discuss is what's already happened. What are the things we know already?
They're there. You published them.
Perfect. So the things that we know already, and we'll let you guys really talk about it. But the things that we know already is it's a military sub-faction of the Order of the Golden Crucible. Tell me a bit about sort of what you can about what's happened with the Golden Crucible and how we ended up where we are in the lore.
So the Crucibles existed for a long time. They're people that have been creating a lot of the tech that's existed, like blasting powder, and I think some of the first Cortexes might have been in the Crucible. And they have a lot of chapter houses scattered throughout all of the continent, on at least this half of the continent, the western half. And the fall of Lael really threw them off balance because their main headquarters was in Lael. And so Khador, to a certain extent, got a bunch of their tech when they raided and took over. And the Crucible had to relocate their main headquarters, and some of them stayed behind to fight as a resistance. And so they've always also had a Crucible Guard that was in charge of security at their buildings, but they never had to really go to war because they were scattered around and just had small places. But now this is them kind of deciding to try and take back some of what they lost. So they're rolling out things like tanks, which they weren't necessarily using before, but they were probably working on. So this is the revealing of a bunch of the technologies that they've had probably behind the scenes and that nobody knew about.
Yeah, it was a sort of hinted at, like, that Khador took some of our stuff, but they didn't get all of it.
Now, is all this stuff coming out of the Ordic Guild house that's been built up like a fortress now? Or is it, like, are we looking at stuff that they're doing somewhere else to sort of hide their intentions?
I don't think that they're hiding their intentions at all. You like I haven't deep dived into the fiction background part of it, but it's definitely like the teaser trailer at Lock and Load. They're coming out of the shadows and saying, we're going to take back a bunch of our stuff. And I'm sure probably also selling some of that tech to some mercs.
All right,
That's a teaser of anything. Don't read into that.
so
we're talking fluff here. We're not.
Yeah, in the setting, they make money. They're not an altruistic like thing. They're about creating new technologies and selling them and
For profit.
For profit. So if you're role playing out there, you could definitely be mercs or something that was trying to set up a contract to work with the Golden Crucible and get your own jetpacks.
Nice. So some of the things that people are really excited about, the long-awaited Toro chassis. That is sort of the basis for their heavies, as far as we have, as we've been teased so far. I know a lot of folks are finally like super excited to be able to make their own wreck.
Well, we've seen those in
that
art
kind of stuff
for a long time, like in books and stuff, and it's like, yay, we're finally going to actually, see that.
Get your hands on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Toro is sort of a staple work jack in like mercenary armies and stuff, and I think it's also used as sort of a very high-end work labor jack in Ord. So it's very common in the setting.
We know that they're off hiding somewhere unrevealed, that was sort of teased that they've been building up the army somewhere and they're going to kind of explode from the trenches type of deal.
So I feel like some of this they've been hiding kind of stuff really just comes from the fact that Hungerford and I don't know the fiction behind it. Not necessarily that there's some like elaborate ruse going on here. We just legitimately don't know a lot of the very detail-oriented stuff about the storyline behind them, because when we're working, we mostly get stuff about the units themselves and about the models, not necessarily what the entire order is doing at the moment.
But it's definitely part of the fiction that they haven't been advertising that they have tanks and stuff. Like they're not driving around in tanks all the time, delivering alchemical milkman style things to
Oh my
various.
goodness!
Hey, what's up, Broadside Bart? Yeah, yep. See you later, buddy. Yeah. God damn it! I wish they'd just lend me that tank. So we know that it's a sort of the idea behind the faction is a whole bunch of sort of mad scientists and alchemists banding together, and that's kind of the feel behind the faction. Can you talk a bit about that feel so far and where it's going in the design process?
So the first two things that we revealed were the suppressor and the Dragon's Breath rockets, which kind of like we chose to do those ones first because they give a frame of reference for everything else. So we're going to talk about Rocketmen here in a little bit. And we need to remember that when we're talking about this unit, that it is affected by things like rust from the suppressor, or ice cage from the suppressor, or withering humor from the Dragon's Breath rocket. And that's sort of how the faction functions, is it takes these different pieces of the army that you can purchase with points, of course, and you can then build sort of what type of army you want. So if you want something very accurate, maybe you're going to take more combat alchemists with ice cage bombs, or suppressors with ice cage sprays. If you want more damaging stuff, you can stack a little more heavily towards rust or withering humor or other unknown effects that are coming.
And then they also have, of course, the Rocketmen for mobility, but then they have the heavier infantry we showed in the concept art Insider a couple days ago. If you want beefier guys that are going to be able to stand and take a punch versus mobility. And their mad science stuff comes into a lot of various rules and some stuff that we haven't even barely begun to tease. Like Alice Mark is one of those things that kind of alchemy is messing with her physiology and turning her from a human into a big monster. But they've got other stuff that's more mental, and they've got other stuff like the ice bombs that are more traditional. Just here's a grenade that turns cold when it hits.
Well, I'm pretty sure we've said that Prospero is actually a brain in a jar.
Yeah.
Inside of a robot. So that's
Yeah.
sort of touching on that mad
Yeah.
science stuff, right?
Yeah, and we've had questions of if Prospero's a convergence thing, and he's not. He's the opposite. Convergence is all about taking out your soul and becoming pure mind, basically, where he is maintaining his meat brain in a robot body.
Yeah, some serious cranging going on. I do love the
Yeah.
I do love the Big Daddy feel of the heavy infantry. I kind of want to see a bunch of conversions with the drills and stuff from BioShock. I think that would be amazing.
I guess the next big question really is there anything else you guys want to talk about with the history? Is there anywhere else where how do they fit into Imran in the grander scheme? Is there anything you can tease us that we don't know yet about the fluff?
Well, the majority of it is going to be very old stuff from Kings, Nations, and Gods, the original role-playing game, all that kind of stuff. Like Golden Crucible has existed since the very beginning, since before Witchfire Trilogy even. So a lot of that stuff is taken directly from those very old books from 15, 18 years ago. I think, and the Rocketmen show this a little bit, and then the medium-base infantry, which I don't even know if we've confirmed they're medium-base, but they're medium-base.
Yeah.
The guys that got spoiled in the Insider from Nate, a lot of their armor style is that of like workers in an alchemy foundry. So they'll have a lot of this padded armor with leather layered on top of it, and they won't have a ton of like giant armor plates. So they won't be like knights running around in suits of armor or something.
Yeah, they were going to a certain extent toward firefighter type feels for some of those guys too.
So that's sort of what the aesthetic is going to look like. It's going to be a little more steampunky, lots of tubes, lots of rebreathers, lots of alchemist leather, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Cool.
Well, I think what we should do is let's talk a bit about the spoiled model now, and then we'll come back to sort of integrate it with the things that we already know. I think everybody's pretty excited to talk about Rocketmen. I want to say this is one of the steampunk aesthetics I love. The Rocketeer is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm glad we finally get to sort of have that model on the table if that's the kind of model we want to play. So, guys, you want to bring up your Rocketeer pages? I'm sure that the live feed is going crazy with people figuring out how it works. And let's talk a bit about the new models. So I'm going to send this over to Pagani. How does this model fit into the faction, and how do you see it playing?
So Rocketmen are one of my favorite units in this faction. And they've gone through a lot of changes, which we did not give you guys the change logs here. Thank God, because some of this stuff would have been pretty crazy. But what I see them as is sort of this excellent skirmishing unit that can use their carbines to fight infantry very, very well. So they're base rat 6. Of course, there's debuffs everywhere, but even at just base rat 6, they can usually aim at range 10, pick off the front lines of infantry, reposition backwards 3 inches. With their command attachment, you can walk up, you can shoot, you can reposition. So they're a very versatile skirmishing unit. They flank incredibly well, and they require very little support from their caster in terms of spells cast directly onto the unit normally. So that all is great. And then they have gravity bombs. And the gravity bombs are very low range. They're range 4, and they're power 12, which a lot of people will probably say that that's not super great. But what I will tell you is with some of the caster buffs in the faction combined with things like suppressors, or I guess when I say caster buffs, I mean more like debuffs on opposing models. There are some buffs that apply. But anyway, we're not going to go into those right now. But with the effects available to the faction, that power 12 can easily shred heavies. So one of the things that happened with these guys is they used to be range 8 instead of 4. And people's casters were just dying everywhere. Because they're gives them +2 speed. It bumps them up to speed 9, right? So they walk 9, they shoot 8. That's a 17-inch walking threat. And you can jack these guys' stats through the roof with all the debuffs and stuff. So this POW 12 is actually kind of one of the big lifting parts of this faction, at least this unit. They can definitely kill heavies with the buffs available to them and the debuffs available to them. Wow. They skirmish very well, and I think they're going to be the backbone of a lot of different lists. So we've got the normal unit card up at the moment. If we want to swap it on over to the officer card, we talked about him a little bit. He gives reposition 3. He also has full thrust as his mini feat, which is +2 speed to defense or around. So that makes him to have 16, which is strong, like very, very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just tried to kill a whole bunch of defense 16 trolls the other day. Turns out they're really, really hard to kill. Defense 16 is a thing, damn it.
Yeah, and speed and mobility are what we've been testing the most with these guys. We've got, like Pagani said, other iterations of them that were faster or weirder or had higher reposition, or like we've tried a bunch of stuff. So when you get them in CID, just think about how we've probably already tested them. And if you say, these guys should be speed 9, maybe we've already seen them at speed 9 and we decided that was too fast. So think about those things when you're giving feedback. Feel free to talk about that kind of feedback, but don't get really sad if we say, okay, we've seen that, we decided it was too good, because we have played around with these guys a lot in a lot of various little dial twists to try to get them to that mobile speed infantry.
And then to kind of top off the unit, we have the Rocketman Gunner, which is the exact same Rocketman guy, but instead of the carbine and the gravity bomb, he has a slug gun, which is range 4 POW 14. So once again, I already said these POW 12s were killing heavies and stuff.
Yeah.
These POW 14s are shredding things. It's not uncommon to see these guys at rolling an effective POW 18 or 20.
Three gunners per, or just one?
No, there's
3 gunners per.
Yeah, there's standard weapon attachments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there's a lot of talk on the chat going on about how they're a gunfighter unit, which is pretty cool.
They are indeed a gunfighter unit. We had some weird iterations with these guys where they were like immune to blast damage and that kind of stuff, and we found that to be way too strong. So we did get sky dropped on these gravity bombs so they don't kill themselves as they gunfighter drop bombs.
Yeah.
So
This is the first time I've seen Skydrop. There's no other unit that has Skydrop.
Yeah. It's brand new.
It's pretty cool.
And it was, like he said, to address that we originally tried them as immune to blast damage. But we figured out that
Def 16
yeah.
or higher.
And immune to blast damage.
Also immune to blast damage. A little rough. For some
problematic.
factions.
Yeah. So we've got some sort of basis. We'll let the chat kind of soak in a little bit more stuff. Jason, if there's any interesting comments, feel free to throw them out there. What I'd like to talk about now is the units that we've seen, some of the things that we've seen. What are some of the interesting interactions you guys have messed with the other parts of this army that have already been spoiled? Can you talk about some of that a little bit?
What's been spoiled?
We have spoiled the Dragon's Breath rocket.
Yeah.
The suppressor.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about very briefly about the Toro and the Vindicator on those crippled systems.
Yeah.
And these guys have Rocketmen.
And
we also talked about combat
I think
alchemists.
I was
you
going to say
did
you spoiled
mention
a couple of the
combat
combat
back on
alchemist
the
abilities.
Dragon's Breath rocket episode.
Yeah.
So we've shown a lot of the debuff aspect of the faction. And if you apply those things to these guys, even without knowing anything else is coming, you've got +2 to hit and damage minimum on these guys. I'm a huge fan of the combat alchemists making things stationary.
Yeah.
And then you just auto hit all of these POW 12, 14, 16, 18 attacks from a 10-man unit, right? Like armor 19 heavies, if you walk it up with enough POW 14s to 16s, they just die. And this is an up to 15-man unit, 14-man unit. So I really like that aspect of this unit and how they're very multi-purpose, and it's because of those debuffs available from the models that we've already spoiled here. One of the things we also wanted to touch on, which is not part of the spoiler, is there is a solo that goes along with this unit as well.
Okay.
And there's additional tiny little bumps to this kind of thing, and I'm excited about that. I guess gal, actually. It's a lady.
Yeah.
Interaction with Windstorm. Do weapons go under an inch? Like, can they go to 0?
They can. Zealots currently do that. Zealots usually end up killing themselves, but these guys will be immune to their own blast damage.
So they can basically drop their bombs at their feet and run away 3 inches.
Yep.
That's really cool.
So for those people that may have not listened to the other 2 podcasts, we're going to catch you up a little bit. We just wanted to get into the Rocketman because I knew we were excited and we couldn't hold back any longer. So one of the things that you guys had mentioned on the other shows is that this is more like an original base faction of War Machine. one of the things that was decided was not to create a new mechanic behind the entire faction. How did that come about? Was, what is the natural progression to say, okay, let's go back to our roots? How do you come to that decision?
It's largely narrative, but also it's complexity. Like you have, we like to talk about, game designers in general like to talk about complexity budgets. So these guys, we wanted them to be flexible. Like Pagani said earlier, we wanted you to be able to build different armies. We wanted them to have a lot of layering effects of like freezing stuff or rusting stuff and all those things. And when you get that many moving parts, another thing on top of that, like Arcana cards or shifting focus around like the Convergence does, starts to get even more complicated. And another part of it was these guys are kind of quintessentially War Machine. They are the steampunk faction. They look the most steampunk. They have, train tanks and steampunk jetpacks and other things we're not going to talk about. So we wanted these guys to be basically like vanilla War Machine with all of the options you would think of with alchemy. Like we've teased alchemy here and there. There's Hutchuk and Gorman and other things like that, but we've never deep dived into what alchemy does in the tabletop game. The RPG has a bunch of crazy alchemy stuff, like you can put acid on the end of your arrows and those kind of things, but we haven't really explored that. So we wanted to see what a faction of alchemists would look like as if we had put them in the game years and years and years ago.
Next sort of. Well, no, this is great. Sorry, is there anything else you wanted to add there?
No, I think you got it.
All right.
I think that's pretty much hit it on the head, that it's mostly a complexity issue. There's so much going on already that we didn't feel we needed another thing, basically.
Yeah, as someone who has to introduce new people to the game, thank you. Because the new shiny faction will not be, okay, maybe you shouldn't start with Grimkin.
So there's some fun ideas going on in the chat about these guys with Ashlyn. Speed 11 Rocketmen.
Yeah. I mean, kind of as we said, like speed 9 on these guys is really good.
Speed 11
Clicking on them is great. Yeah. Maybe you wanted speed 11 for the mini feat. Right? Like,
seems like
Mercer can love these guys.
The next place I wanted to go with this conversation is let's talk about testing. You guys sort of hinted at some of the testing you've done over the last. I'm guessing you probably had this in front of you for a year. You've been able to test them. Do you guys have any fun, interesting stories about the interactions that you've tested? How did we get to this place? Is there anything you can tell us about that?
I mean, we had a playtest game a while back where Souls scarred someone with a solo that we haven't spoiled yet. So yeah, I can't even really go into details, but just know that it was amazing. It was like the perfect setup of everything all going in all at the same time, and it was awesome. Yeah. As far as Rocketmen playtest, yeah, I've had games where I've killed casters on the top of turn 2, like consistently with them, and things have changed since then. Like as I said, they're not range 8 anymore. They used to cause fire damage, and we've already said that there is oil in the faction.
Yeah.
So holy moly, that didn't stay.
Yeah.
Because good God, it was too much.
But I took them up against Blighted Ogre a while ago, and the Rocketmen didn't do so well against guys that can stack that many accuracy buffs and stuff on berserking units and all those kind of things. So
there is certainly counterplay available to a lot of factions for these guys.
Well, I think this begs the question. Let's talk about, because we've got you guys here, which is awesome. Let's talk about testing this many interactions, because one of the interesting things about this faction is that a lot of the units and models have 3 options for every model type of thing for everything that they do. How do you guys go about testing those interactions thoroughly? What is the procedure to get to the point where you say, okay, I don't think we screwed this up?
Well, it takes a year.
Yeah, it's iteration basically. It's repetition, and once a new playtester, and that can be one of us too, people who haven't played the faction a lot, because I haven't really dove into the faction this deep. I've been playing the other side of the table or playtesting other projects. So Pagani's played probably 3 or 4 or 10 times more games than I have with the faction. And so as you start to get comfortable with how they work, then you start pressing the envelope and seeing, well, what happens if I take all of this, or I go this way, or my army's mostly battle engines, or whatever.
See how he's just like sliding those in there?
Yeah. And we also have fake tournaments. We don't do it all the time. We do it probably quarterly or so, where we build 2-list pairings, and half the players are playing, especially a brand new faction, and half the players are playing other stuff. And some of us are control. I played my Rulik Searforge army with nothing new in it at all in that tournament.
Played a reasonably standard Ostrom.
Yeah, we found a 2 battle engine Ostrom list that was a variation that Pagani came with from tournaments, and I tried that. So I was a control in that, but half the players, 4 of the 8 or 5 of the 8, were playing Crucible 4. And so you get interesting choices when you say, well, I can only play with these 2 armies, and I'm going to have to face things I don't understand. And it's a little bit different from playtest, where I say I'm playing Blighted Ogre today, and Pagani says, okay, well, I'll build an army that's not going to stomp it, but I'll build something and we'll test how those interact. And we've, of course, had the Man of War, and we have the things coming up in the future that I teased in that one Insider, like Tharn and Exemplars and those kind of things that get mixed in. We try to keep from playtesting things that are really, really far apart necessarily, because development on them hasn't gone quite as far as stuff that we've been playtesting for a year. But every once in a while we throw those new things in too.
When you're doing that type of playtesting, do you go through places like Conflict Chamber and Discount Games and pull like lists that are winning tournaments and play against that? Is that how you do that usually?
We don't necessarily do exact lists, but yes, usually we do that kind of stuff. When we're looking for those control style lists, we will try and take things that we think are interesting from those lists of previous tournament winners and stuff.
Next up on our list is, so far, who in the office has kicked everyone's ass with the alpha version of this faction?
Souls. I don't know. I don't keep track of them. But Souls has probably played the most games with them.
For sure.
And when someone who hasn't seen how this is War Machine, when someone who sees this faction for the first time and has never dealt with it before goes up against it, they're going to get surprised by stuff. And like we encourage people on the CID forums, we don't play test cutthroat games of I'm going to stomp your face in. Like, we talk through things, and if I see an opening that you missed, or you put a model in a wrong place and a measurement would still work from a better place for it, we talk about that stuff. So wins and losses are not that important, but when it comes to experience and the newness of it, it's Souls or it's Pagani. I gave you that little. Hey, that little.
The love is real.
You did win the internal tournament, but we don't care about pairings and win-losses and stuff in those tournaments either.
No.
We care about interesting pairings and facing things you haven't faced before and that kind of stuff.
We don't care about it. We just walk around with a T-shirt that says, I beat your ass.
Wear that T-shirt.
Yeah.
So we haven't really delved into some of the other stuff. Sorry, was there a question from the audience?
Yeah, there's a Legionnaires just put up a question. Speaking of control, does Crucible Guard have caster-based control, or will control elements come from the army itself?
Well, to be specific, when I say control, I mean like scientific control. Like, some people get a sugar pill and they don't actually get the medication.
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
Interesting.
We didn't mean control as in the playstyle control.
Yeah.
We meant control as in we know this list is a good list and wins tournaments, sort of what we got asked earlier. And that is what we consider a control list.
Awesome.
That being said, yes, they do have a control caster.
Cool.
Kind of.
So let's go back into some of the models that were spoiled on the other podcasts, our brethren on the podcast networks. Let's talk a bit about, because I mean, you guys haven't got to gush over things like the Dragon's Breath rocket, and how that will interact with Rocketmen specifically, because I mean that's really interesting too. I believe it was on Crippled Systems. You guys talked a bit about how the Dragon's Breath rockets really crux for a lot of lists.
Dragon's
like that.
Breath was chain attack, I believe.
Yeah, but you talked a bit about how that was
heavy.
You know, it's one of those things that you know, for lack of a better way of saying it, I've got certain models that I start with first. how does that interact with Rocketmen? Is Rocketmen one of the reasons why that comes first, and how do those two models specifically interact?
Well, I mean, if you're running into, say, a bunch of champions, which you guys have brought up a couple times here, if you have a Withering Humor, or if you have a Dragonsmith Rocket dropping Withering Humor on these champions, it's going to drop their armor from 16, probably 18 to stone, back down to 16. And then they're def 14. You throw some Ice Cage bombs at them. They're all def 12 now. These Rocketmen will shred that entire unit in one activation.
Yikes.
Like they walk up with a bunch of POW 12 Rat 6 stuff. They're Rat 8. They need 6s to hit. They're POW 14. They're dice off 4. You get 11 of them plus 3 slug guns. Like, that will kill the vast majority of that champion unit. And then they can just fan back out with reposition. Right? Like, even with 2 rockets, 2 4-inch AoEs, the rockets will do damage. They can aim to Rat 8, I think. I think they're 6 base.
Yeah.
Maybe they're 5. So we put it even at 7. And even if they miss, they can scatter and pick off 2 of the champions or something. So there's just, like, even just thinking about it in that respect, these Rocketmen way out-threat the champions. The champions don't really kill them back very well, and they can kill the champions.
All George is thinking is, can I have them now?
like just to use an example that you used, right? Like, between just that one model and these Rocketmen, it already does a lot of work there.
And then when you get the sprays coming in from the heavy that we've seen, you're able to apply that type of thing pretty deep. That's one of the things that I was happy to see with the heavy being able to squirt deep into the lines, as it were.
I need you to calm down.
Yeah, that's now on the internet.
Yep,
I may make a loop of that one.
There is quite a bit of squirting.
There's a lot of squirting going on in this pack. Oh boy,
we went down that road fast. Wait, only 36 minutes. Good job, guys. So let's talk about the other thing that was spoiled: the suppressor heavy warjack.
Yeah,
my
squirty friend.
Yeah.
So he's definitely a support-oriented warjack. Like, he's really not supposed to be up there killing other heavy warjacks or anything like that. And he has 13 points, which is a pretty good amount of points. But as we said, if you can use Combat Alchemists to apply the first Ice Cage, especially to like a unit of champions or something, right? And then you can Ice Cage them a second time with a suppressor. Now they're def 10. This is no longer a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so these things can really stack up these debuffs. And it is one of the forms of getting rust in the faction. There is at least one more that I can think of off the top of my head.
At least one.
I don't know if there's... Well, I mean, there's always Gorman, right?
Yeah.
There's one more that's not Gorman. How about that?
Well, I think this is a good time. Sorry to interrupt you, because we can come back to this in a second. This is a great time. We've all seen the sneak of the Rust change, which I think... I mean, Gorman fans are excited to have Rust be a little more meaningful in the game, I think, because
Convergence players hate you all.
Oh, here's Convergence first off. I mean, for me, that's a great thing for finally have a way to just deal with Convergence.
Go away.
Or something for Convergence.
Go away.
But let's talk a bit about that. Where did the Rust change come from, other than the things that we already kind of thought?
So as we were...
So say it out loud. For one thing.
Okay, so the Rust change is that Rust is, instead of only affecting warjacks, it now affects all constructs. So it will work on wolves, it will work on Convergence infantry, all that kind of stuff. But one of the things as we were working on this faction is we wanted an effect that worked on constructs as well as warjacks, of course. And we didn't want it to stack with Rust. So instead of making a new rule that applied this effect, which we could have very easily done, it would have given us Rust paired with another thing, and that's an additional -2 armor that we don't want to see. Because, I mean, we're already talking about, like, +4 or -4 armor, however you want to look at it. It's really easy to do in this faction. So we're already looking at POW 18 slug guns. We don't really need POW 20 slug guns. And we really don't need, like, POW 23 slug guns, which can exist in some casters. So we don't need that. Nobody wants POW 23 slug guns coming from downtown, right? So that was one of the main reasons that it changed. It also just opens up counterplay to a lot of different stuff. So we like what it did in general.
Well, I think a lot of us agree that it's a great... I mean, for people that have to deal with it, George is a longtime Convergence player, and there's just not a lot I could do against half your army.
It was glorious.
It was, yeah. Whereas now there's ways to add that into with Gorman in particular. There's ways to add that in. I think a lot of people are. I'm excited about being able to have a way to debuff it. Anyway,
one of the things about this faction seems to be that it has the same sort of aesthetic that Crix does with we're just going to stack up all these debuffs, and then our what look like subpar models on paper suddenly are just killing the world. Except they're doing it without all the magic-y stuff. They're just like, we have these 20 vials of stuff that are going to eat through your armor. Let's see what happens when we just throw them all at you.
And that's kind of the idea, right? Is this alchemy effect? Is there's a lot of quote unquote experimentation that goes off inside the faction, where, I mean, we got this weird gas stuff that will mess up living people. Let's see what happens if we shoot it at those trolls over there, and then send in our troops. So there's definitely some of that going on.
But this faction is definitely way shootier than Crix.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's terrifying.
Crix has guns, but these guys have lots and lots of guns.
These guys got real guns.
Confirmed Crix has no real guns.
I've dealt with your ghost fleet. I would like to say.
not enough.
Yeah.
Are the Crucible Guard are the Golden Crucible hiring these people as mercenaries into the Crucible Guard, or are they building up their own military in this case?
Yeah, this is their security force enlarged.
Okay.
Because a lot of this stuff is state-of-the-art tech they don't want slipping into the hands of other people.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I was like, is this a group of steelheads that they've said, okay, now take off all that armor, put on this experimental backpack, and get out there?
I mean, there is a little bit of that going on.
Yeah,
but we're not going into that.
And like we've teased, there's a bit more experimentation here and there with those kind of things.
Yeah.
Let's talk. We can go back a little bit to the heavies because you've teased out some of the heavies. Is there anything like? Obviously, you can't spoil the next model, which we don't. I mean, we're not going to ask you to do. But is there anything about the way that the warjacks in this faction work that gets you guys kind of riled up?
I mean, they're warjacks, right? Like the Toro punches stuff, the Vindicator shoots stuff, the Suppressor squirts stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no ridiculous special rules or anything here that makes them function in any different way from what a normal warjack would function as. But what I will say is when you do stack all these debuffs on stuff, stats can be very deceiving. So.
Sweet.
Just keep that in mind when you do see these things. Like the POW 12 on these Rocketmen is brutal. The POW 10 on these Rocketmen can be brutal. The Rat 6 can be very brutal. It's all about how they choose to apply their army, and kind of like Protectorate, as they start losing these tech pieces, like if you lose your Choir and Protectorate, your warjacks become much less efficient. So as you lose things like your Combat Alchemists, your Dragons with Rockets, your Suppressors, the army is going to start functioning at a lower and lower level. So,
and for all you guys out there that are in CID and always want a menu of abilities on every single model,
this one's for you.
Yeah. So not every model has a menu of abilities, but this faction is about menus of abilities.
Jason, we're gonna head over into the open Q&A section. So I know that you've already been asking questions out there, the world of the internet, but now is actually your chance. We will try to address as many questions as we can in the next 5-10 minutes. So please throw your questions up into the live chat. Those people who are watching this or listening to it after the fact, I want to apologize. You obviously can't ask your questions live, but what I'll ask you to do is throw them up onto either comment on the YouTube feed or comment on Muse on Minis on the post on Muse on Minis, and we'll try to send these to the guys and try to answer as best we can, or they'll try to answer as best they can. But this is the best way really to communicate with you guys. So if you have questions, now's the time to ask it. Jason, do we have any questions that sort of came up in the chat over the course of the last hour?
Yeah, well, just right now, Swamp Mist is wondering if the ice cage, the thing that does the ice caging, is it liquid nitrogen?
It's some sort of technology that's alchemical.
Cool.
I mean, as we said, we don't get a lot of the very specific fictional elements to these. We get they have ice stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Like, it's not like, here's the chemical composition of the thing. So we don't know if it's exactly liquid nitrogen, but in my head canon, it could be.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird head canon in here. I wouldn't suggest wandering around. You'll find some stuff.
People are asking if the Duelist and Toro are going to get Merc abilities. Like, are we going to be able to take them in Mercs?
So
so we have said nothing about a duelist.
Okay, I'm just reading the question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, sure. Let's tell.
So didn't we already errata that one?
We have errated a couple of warjacks
Have
to
that
have
one rule?
Maker's Mark. Like the
Yeah.
Vanguard, for example, has Maker's Mark. The Toro will be a mercenary jack that has Maker's Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
That's huge.
Wow.
Huge. Rutger will finally get his
little friend.
his little friend.
But
Huge.
before it becomes Rex, it's like the old Rex.
Yeah,
Huge.
Yeah.
Proto-Rex.
Another question from the chat, guys. How has the testing been going? Have you guys been testing Crucible Guard units much in the Leylee's Resistance theme?
We have played several games with it, yes.
Yep.
We did that when we first announced it. It's been sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they do work.
Nice.
These units are very good. This to me is I mean, so whereas Grimkin was like a very heavy-based faction, because Skin and Bones is like the real workhorse of that faction, and of course you can do infantry builds, right? Like I've been doing Wanderer infantry builds all the time. To me, Crucible Guard is primarily focused in infantry. And the Warjacks are good. They definitely contribute, but they, to me, are not the purpose of the faction. So
Yeah, and we're gonna focus primarily on Crucible models in Crucible armies, but we want you guys to test all of the various options for all the models in the CID and whatever faction that might play it.
Yep.
Which is a very subtle tease, Jim.
So good. We've got another question.
Is there a
No. They don't know what this is.
is there a possibility of Cav models?
I mean, anything's possible.
Anything is possible.
There's always a possibility.
And that's as far as we go with that.
Yep.
Well, this calls back to a question we had earlier where you hinted at some funny stuff, but what were the coolest, our Dragon Pup asks, what were the coolest but most broken rules you had specifically for Rocketmen at points?
I was definitely the fire damage in range 8 at the same time.
Yeah.
With oil.
With oil in faction.
With
Yeah.
oil and stationary ice bombs and rust and with, like,
And
just
and the speed. That
The speed.
that many feet for extra speed has gone through some variations too, and there was some crossover between long range fire bombs and more speed shenanigans.
I mean, to the point where we were playtesting Black Industries, and 2 units of Rocketmen walked up on a caster's speed turn and killed, I want to say, 6 heavies in one go for 2 units.
In
So
Black Industries?
that was too much.
Oh my God.
Not that.
Wow.
So
That as long as it's only against cricks, I approve this message.
So, yeah, that was.
The questions are flying fast all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Will Merc minions be able to work for Crucible Guard, or will be more restricted like Grimkin and COC?
We have specifically said that at the very least, Horgenhold Forge Guard will be able to. I accidentally spoiled that in the last.
And aren't some getting partisan?
I mean, I think Gorman is.
I was going to say Gorman's probably partisan.
Yeah.
Maybe Hutchuk. I don't actually know if he's a partisan, but I'm pretty sure it works for him. So. Yeah.
So it will be many more Merc options than Grimkin, but many more could be 2 more or 3 more because Grim can have 1.
It's Eilish, yeah.
Yeah,
Eilish works for everybody.
Yeah, I was going to say, Eilish will work for anyone.
As long as you bought the magazine.
And if you didn't, yes.
I have seen the alternate Eilish sculpt that they're working on. It looks sweet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Interesting.
More questions from the audience. We got many. We got to go quick, Jason.
Geez, they're flying by real fast.
For the purposes
there.
of testing, what will be forced to give first when a CG model breaks the world in a Merc theme? The theme or the model rules?
Ooh, interesting.
That's a big question.
We're testing these models. If if something in this army breaks the Lely's resistance, then the model will more than likely get toned down and not some tweak to that theme force.
All right, Draker raids. I'm just going to read these. I'm sorry, I can't. They're coming so fast, I can't really edit. Which caster in Crucible Guard would be most likely to make a joke at Striker's expense to his face?
Baldwin, for sure. Look at that mustache. Man.
Yeah.
That mustache is
And
amazing.
he'd be twirling the mustache while doing it.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 8:50. We're going to give 10 minutes. 10 minutes for the toughest questions in all of Warmahordes. George, hit that button. It's time for...
Here we go.
lightning round. All right. I warn you guys all now.
I feel like this is my chance.
This is...
Yeah, we got PP guys on there. We're totally going to nail this.
All right.
Oh, my God.
So Skype does a weird thing where if we yell really loud,
Which
these guys do constantly to try to cheat, I can't... I won't be able to hear you. You can just come up with a buzz or a bing bong or whatever your sound effect that you want when you buzz in to answer the question. But I'll ask that you two guys on the Skype raise your hand as well at the same time, because that gives me a visual cue if they're just going, "Blah!" Which they do. All right. And I will warn you all, I tried to do enough research that I didn't. So last time Pagani was on, he called me on like 3 questions. He's like, "Will, you're wrong. It's not that at all, you dumbass."
I hope you did your research.
I
this
tried
time.
to research it this
I hope
time.
you got a good Minty Fresh question.
I do have it. Minty is back, baby. So we got a
that's awesome.
ridiculously tough Minty Fresh question that you'll probably get. All right, question number 1. What is the melee range of a headbutt from a large base? Will. Pagani. Sorry?
Half an inch.
It is. Correct. 0.5. Is that what you said?
Yeah, he said half an inch.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry, I didn't quite hear that because I was talking, because that's how that works. Question number 2. So 1 point to Pagani. You writing this down?
No.
Okay. Question number 2. What are the names of Gristle 1's fell calls? We'll go with George first because his answers will be ridiculous.
Stop rolling so many dice and roll too many dice and take away the good ones.
Wrong. I'm going to go over to Pagani, who answered second.
Wait, hold on. We say Gristle 2 or Gristle 1?
Gristle 1's fell calls.
Hoof it. I might give him our 2 ones, but here we go. Hoof it. Oh, man. Right, that's the one on Sons of Bragg.
I'll give you 1 for hoof it.
I'll take Hoof it.
Okay, 1 for hoof it. The other 2 were Cacophony and Heroic Ballad.
Yeah, I should know these. I was just editing War Room for brand new Company of Iron models, and I came across those as things I didn't have to edit. Yeah.
Question number 3. My blade's name is Rivener, and it's known for its death toll. Who am I?
Oh, I know this.
Oz.
Isn't that Tartarus?
It is Tartarus. 1 point for Oz. Question number 4. Boomhowler's men carry what kind of ranged weapon? Pagani.
Blunderbuss.
It is a blunderbuss. You guys are doing really good, by the way. I just want to...
I thought it was going to be called, like, ranged weapon or something.
Jason, I'm really let down. You were like... You're losing your, like, crown, dude. You've been...
I'm sleepy.
Oh, is that what
It has nothing to do with the amount of beers you've consumed.
Yeah.
Might have something to do with that.
All right. Question number 5. Dawn Guard Destors are on what size of base? Oh, I'm going to have to give that to George, came in first.
50 mil.
50 mil base is correct.
I thought these were hard.
Yeah.
The other ones were.
The other ones were... I got to throw an easy one so that these guys can get a point every once in a while. Just like once in a while. Otherwise, they get all moany after the show. They're like, Will, those questions were too hard. You just wanted our guests to win. Question number 6. How many Warjack points does Karchev have? Pagani.
31.
Incorrect. Jason.
30.
It is 30. It is 30.
Yeah! I'm done. See you later, guys. I have reached peak.
You're going to go take your pants off now,
Yeah,
aren't you?
I'm done.
Question number 7. Gallows can push an enemy how far? I got to give that to Pagani first.
Do you want the trolley answer or the real answer?
It's up to you whether you want the point or not.
The real answer is D6, but the trolley answer is always one inch shorter than you need.
Absolutely.
There's a wife comment in there somewhere, but anyway,
The
yes,
problem
D6 is
problem
correct.
with your Karchev answer is you've got about an hour before he erratas that.
Oh yeah, you were wrong, bitches. It is 31.
Ah, damn it.
You were thinking about that for like the last 5 minutes, weren't you?
No, I saw it in chat.
Okay, fair enough. Question number 8. Taste of Ashes is the name of which caster's trump? Pagani?
King of Nothing.
It is King of Nothing. I told you, I got to give them an easy one every once in a while.
And we don't pick it up.
And they don't get it. So, question number 9. What is the speed of a meat thresher that has turned up the heat?
Oh,
Jason,
Speed 9.
incorrect. Oz.
That was my guess.
George.
I think it's only speed 8, isn't it?
It is speed 8. Speed 8 is correct. So it's 6 plus 2. I'll go double check it. I could be wrong. This has happened before.
I thought it was 7.
I'll probably have to check it, and I'll probably be wrong because that happens all the dang time.
Chat said 8.
Hey, maybe I'm right.
Maybe.
That happens
Who
from
knows?
time to time.
There-
All right.
Stranger Things.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Minty Fresh question of the week. Yes, this is the most difficult question. I want you to just close your eyes, all three of you.
Imagine
that you had
3.
read every single book that
that was ever
ever put out, including all the Monster Apocalypse lore.
He said all 3 of us, so which one of us didn't have to?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, George, I don't even count. So, question. I'm just kidding.
sadness.
Question number 10. How old was Sorsha during the Boarsgate Massacre?
Ooh.
I didn't even know there was a massacre in Boarsgate.
Oh.
Unless we're talking about the Grimkin one.
No, I don't remember this
8.
Incorrect. Anybody want to hazard a guess?
Yeah, I do. 21.
Incorrect.
Oh,
I
no,
would guess.
drink.
I
Did
would
you
guess-
just really say 13?
Yeah.
You are correct, sir. You
the hell?
get the bonus follow-up question.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
You get no points if you get this wrong. It's double or nothing.
Oh, no.
All right.
I'm going to get this wrong.
All right. The question is, who killed Sorsha's father?
Oh, jeez.
What?
An annoyed Crixian?
Incorrect.
Anybody?
Apparently it was Butcher.
Didn't the first question give that away?
No.
Didn't.
How old was Sorsha during the Boarsgate Massacre?
I thought her father died during the Boarsgate Massacre.
Correct, but who killed
Who killed her?
the
and
father?
I thought that everyone knew that the butcher did that.
Hey! That is
Obviously
it.
not everyone.
Not everyone.
I didn't know that.
Everybody but George.
That's why they call him the butcher.
All right, we're giving double points to Oz, so Oz is the winner tonight. Hey! And that's how that works, because the points don't matter. All right, guys, we got to do a little bit of upkeep. First off, I want to thank you guys for coming on. It's always
it was
great.
Amazing to have you.
Always awesome to have PP Steffes on. Before we go, we have to ask the question that everybody, really wants asked. Rails or feet?
Or we.
Well, I mean, it's called a railless. So it's obviously not rail.
It's railless.
Can it fire rails?
No, it doesn't have any.
Well, it's not using them to move on. It might as well do something with them.
No, the closest thing to a railgun is the strike tanker.
Okay.
All right. Before we go, we got to, of course, give props to our buddies at Out of the Box. They carry the full line of War Machine and Hordes, as well as every single paint thing in the universe.
Yeah.
All the
Vallejo, they've got
P3s.
everything.
Yeah, they got everything. So don't forget that they are online if you want to order. If you're in Canada, they're a great place to order. And if you're into baseball cards, they're also great. I want to thank our guys from Crooked Mile, the brewers from Crooked Mile, who made our beer tonight. Free beer. We love free beer. And last but not least, I got to thank the guys from Use on Minis who
Make sure this podcast get out to all the people
yeah.
without our website crashing.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. George, you get like I'm going to give you 30 seconds. 30 seconds to shout out about a local event.
Any local event?
Any local event. You're running out of
Well, come out on Saturday to the next Out of the Box tournament. We're going to be doing our normal thing. It's part of the Out of the Box series, which is 8 tournaments, and then the final tournament is a great big one. There's a whole mess of prizing. I think the final prize is a $500 value army.
Woo.
Like, you basically just win a new army at the end of this tournament series. So come on out, get your points. And remember, you can get points for going to the Tuesday night game. Hello to everybody who's actually watching live at Out of the Box right now, because I know they have it up on their TV in the gaming area. And come on out and have a lot of fun. And in October, come to my con, Armatura.
Okay, perfect. The last thing I got to give a shout out for is the Nova Open. I am currently in the middle of painting the troll.
You got the models.
It arrives tomorrow, I think, according to my tracker. But I will be painting that, and me and a lot of really, really, really incredible painters will be getting together, as well as some form of.
How did they mess up and get you in there?
I don't know. They asked me back. I can't figure that out.
Yeah.
But there's actually some ex PP staffers involved, some current PP staffers involved. I think it's insane. It's going to be really, really cool. So check that out. Go to the Nova Open when that auction comes. I'll tell you when that happens. I think I got it all. So, last but not least, I'm going to ask Pagani and Oz, where can we, if we want to go hang out with you guys at a con, what's the next con you guys are going to?
Adepticon.
Yeah, we'll both be at Hungerford, Pagani, and I. Most of the wills will be at Adepticon.
3 to 5.
Perfect. So you can go.
And Sue?
In this. So when I come to the zoo.
Don't tell them about the crossing the border. They're not allowed to do that.
Oh, right.
Because all their money is worth so much now.
And for any retailers, Pagani will be in Reno at the Gamma Trade Show
That's true.
the week
you're going to
before
Gamma?
Adepticon.
It's also my wife's birthday. She's very happy.
Hey, Jason took off tomorrow so that he could make his wife happy for Valentine's Day. Good job, Jason. You're the only responsible adult among us all.
I really didn't need to take off a whole day for that.
Well, fair. Wait, was that bragging? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. We're going to end it at that. George, hit that button. Dice down. Moose Machine and This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes is a proud part of the Muse on Minis network. Podcasts go online every Thursday morning. You can watch the show live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and keep in touch with us on our Facebook page. Just Google Moose Machine. If you can't find us, you're doing the internet wrong. Woohoo!
And we're out. Thank you very much, guys.
That was awesome, guys. Thank you